welcome to a new episode of Digging Deep and Oki 811 podcast. I'm your host, Luis, along with my partner, William Bohannon. Today we have a special guest, Sam Hall, Vice President for the Damage Prevention Institute at CGA. Hello, Sam. Thank you for being here with us today. How are you doing? How are you feeling? It's a beautiful day, at least here in Oklahoma, sunny, 80 degrees Celsius.
It's raining here in Richmond, Virginia, but I do want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, absolutely, we're delighted to have you here.
Sam, let's start right away. Tell us first about who you are and what you do, and a little bit of your background so we can understand how CGA came along in your career.
Sure. I started my career at the U.S. Department of Transportation in what's called the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA. Pretty common name in the world of pipeline and hazardous liquid and natural gas pipeline regulation. They are the federal regulators over that. I started there and spent over time. I spent about 22 years there. And starting in around 2008, I got pretty involved in damage prevention and a variety of other topics. But damage prevention became a major focus of mine at that time. Of course, damage is a big deal in natural gas and hazardous liquid pipelines. And, I was very excited to get involved in it and had an opportunity to meet every stakeholder group there is, get in front of those people, get to know some key players in the industry. And then I was fortunate enough after my time at PHMSA to join CGA just about 2 years ago as the vice president of a program within CGA called the Damage Prevention Institute.
Nice. First question?
Oh, no.
I wanted to ask you another important question for those who are new listeners. What is CGA? What is I know it's Common Ground Alliance, that's what it stands for, but what is their main focus as an organization, and what do they like to their main goal as an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So CGA, Common Ground Alliance, was established in 2000, and it is the only national nonprofit that is focused on preventing excavation damage to underground utilities, and to protecting the people who live and work near those assets. We do that through a spirit of shared responsibility among stakeholders. And all of us in this industry know that there are many players in the damage prevention world. We enjoy the membership of 15 stakeholder groups who have a role to play in damage prevention. And we provide a forum and an opportunity for those stakeholder groups to come together and collaboratively try to resolve the systemic challenges that face us all.
Very nice. And Sam, with the stakeholders, what kind of resources might they find with the Common Ground Alliance?
We really are trying to fill the gaps that we can for stakeholders. As a national nonprofit, we can't get too far into the weeds on exactly what stakeholders do, right? Mm-hmm. State law dictates that, policies, contracts, those kinds of things dictate behavior in the field. But the CGA is an organization that is trying to help individual stakeholder groups as well as the entire industry resolve our challenges. And we do that by developing resources that fill those gaps. Most notably, we have an online excavator training program, brand new. We're very excited about that. That seems to have a lot of impact. It is by no means the gold standard in training for excavators, but it does help fill in gaps in training that already exists, whether at the state level or within companies or other organizations. We also we have a variety of other resources that we provide, a lot of research. We do quite a bit of surveying of the industry to take the temperature of what's going on in the world. We also develop white papers and case studies on issues that seem to really have impact, and we think that have legs and could be, copied across the country. We're really looking at data is king for us, right? So we have a database called the Damage Information Reporting Tool, where we collect voluntarily submitted data from stakeholders across the country. They do not have to be members of CGA to do that. And the data that we collect helps us, once we analyze that information, we do that on an annual basis and we produce a report. Those reports really give us insights into what we need to do, or at least what we are seeing as far as trends in the industry. And so the DIRT report and the data that we collect are just invaluable resources. We produce best practices. Best practices are developed by consensus of all of our stakeholder groups. So they are truly best practices. These are not just the ideas of one or more stakeholder groups. It's everyone's idea. We also produce marketing materials so that our members can promote 811, promote safe digging, promote a variety of topics. And we have dashboards of information on 811 centers, because of course many people work in multiple states and they want to have a better sense of what are the differences between state laws as they work across the country. And then lastly, one of our biggest draws is the events that we host. Our annual conference, which is coming up at the end of April this year in Colorado Springs. And then we have 2 annual committee summits that we host around the country. And these are all opportunities for our members and stakeholders to come together and get down to business and in a collaborative way, talk through the challenges that we're facing and see if we can resolve some of these things, whether that be through development of a new best practice, whether it be through the, identifying research that's required or what have you.
I have a question regarding best practices. You said you guys get together for consensus. Is that kind of like a through research and surveys? Does it take kind of like a time to make a decision or to determine, hey, this is what's considered best practice, and kind of start promoting that best practice?
Absolutely. Yeah, the way best practices work in a nutshell, this isn't going to be a complete answer, but our members can propose a best practice.
Okay.
And then that proposal is discussed among all stakeholder groups. The Best Practices Committee within Common Ground Alliance is the largest and probably the most rigorous committee that we support or have within CGA. So members of that committee can submit a best practice idea. It gets discussed. Then research may go into the best practice. Information is collected from other stakeholders. And then there is debate and conversation about the best practice.
Okay.
Wording matters. If any one of our stakeholder groups, and again, that's 15 stakeholder groups, if any one of them objects to the best practice, it does not become a best practice until it goes back to the drawing board, is revised, and everyone unanimously approves the best practice. So it can be a lengthy process. Sometimes it can be a pretty fast one if there is a significant safety need that needs to be addressed or what have you. But it is, in recent years, it's become a really efficient and effective approach to developing these best practices. We've got over 160 best practices. These are living documents. We produce an annual best practices manual that's accessible online and in hard copy. And it reflects the work of the committee. And we're talking hours and hours and hours of volunteer work from the leading minds in damage prevention across the country.
Another question?
Yes, absolutely. So with all of those wonderful resources and all of the excellence that CGA brings to damage prevention, we were curious, what might be, in your opinion, the greatest misconception people have when it comes to 811 and damage prevention?
For so long, the tagline has always been call 811, contact 811. And I can't stress enough how important that is. We all know that contacting 811 is the first step in safe excavation. And typically, when a call to 811 is made, you don't see a damage. Now, that doesn't mean you won't see a damage, but you generally reduce damages by using the 811 system. However, simply calling before you dig is not the end of the story. It's the start of the story. And there are so many people that touch damage prevention or the damage prevention process throughout, once that call is initiated, now everyone has to do a job. The facility owner operator must be notified. They must go out and locate and mark those utilities on time and accurately. The excavator must know how to dig safely around those utilities and perform their job in a safe way to avoid hitting the utilities that have been marked. There are challenges, of course, with failure to call 811. That's always a perennial challenge. We see a lot of challenges, especially among the fence building and the landscaping community not calling. But there are many others who don't call as well. And then, of course, locating and marking challenges tend to be a huge problem that leads to excavation damage. That could be missed marks, it could be late marks, it could be any number of things. And then lastly, excavation practices in the field is a leading cause of excavation damage. A backhoe or a trencher is the number one piece of equipment used when a utility is damaged, but a hand tool is the number two piece of equipment that is damaged during a utility, or that damages a utility during excavation. So what's remarkable about that is that you're talking about people's behaviors and choices in the field. Damage prevention is not simply calling 811. It's what everyone does after that call to make sure that the proper procedures are executed and that people know exactly what to do.
And a follow-up question, how do you think, Sam, that you said the word behavior, how do you think that with the CGA efforts and all the stakeholders, that can be shifted to more positive behavior towards damage prevention and calling 811? How do you see that can change for better?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned earlier, this is just one example, I think, of what really can change and could be a tremendously effective approach. But, I think that if we can get facility owner operators who are generally the sponsors of most excavation activity, right? And I'm talking about water, gas, electric, sewer, hazardous liquid pipelines, whatever it might be. Those organizations are the sponsors of a lot of the excavation activity that is causing damages to utilities. In fact, fiber optic or telecom and water work in particular are the two most common types of work that are causing damages to, believe it or not, natural gas pipelines and to telecom. So telecom is damaging telecom at a very high rate. I think that if we can focus on those facility owner operators, developing contracts that prioritize proper behavior in the field from the locator, who is often paid for by that facility owner operator, who is always paid for by that facility owner operator, and from the contractor and their subs, who are hired by these facility owner operators. Those contracts are what are dictating behavior. Everyone has to follow the law, and sometimes the law is not enforced adequately. I would say rarely is the law enforced adequately across the country. The law is there to protect people, but what really drives performance and really drives activity are contracts. Right? If you want to be compensated properly, you shall do the following things. Incentives. And, and then of course, the facility owners that are putting these contracts out, they have to enforce their own contracts. Their safety culture is the excavator safety culture. It is the locator safety culture. The facility owner operators can and should impose their safety culture on these service providers. And there are many ways to do that. And it's very successful, much more successful in some sectors of the underground than in others. And, I'll say natural gas and hazardous liquid pipelines are the most regulated utilities in the United States. And they often, because of that, they have a tremendous incentive to have ironclad contracts that make sure that they're not on the hook for someone's mistake. And, I think that if we can drive that would be a tremendous help across the board. The other thing I really want to focus on is mapping. facility owner operators should have good maps and records of their utilities underground. You should know where your stuff is. There have been a lot of reasons for why that hasn't happened. There's no reason in trying to beat anybody up about it. But the truth is, there's no hope in that. The truth is that if we do want to better avoid these damages, we really have to know where things are. So that when a facility owner operator receives a dig ticket and they send out their locator, or whether that be an in-house locator or a contract locator, they know they have a map. Now, that map would never be a replacement for the 811 system. They still have to put paint on the ground. The law is the law. But a map can demonstrate that, hey, this doesn't look quite right, or it seems to me that we've marked all the facilities in the area, or what have you. So I think mapping contracts are tremendous elements of improvement over time.
You think that the digital age is a little bit of a factor since they have to keep their maps updated with digital part to it?
Absolutely. The technology to create and update and maintain maps has existed for 20 years. I started my career, well, much longer than that. I started my career in mapping. I was working on a team that mapped all the pipelines in the U.S. And it is possible to do this. It's not rocket science. It can be costly, and that is something that we're very interested in studying, sort of the economic impact of or the cost benefit analysis of what does it take to really run a good mapping system? And okay, that's your cost. What benefits do you really get out of that? What do your damage rates look like? How does that impact your overall performance in maintaining the integrity of your utilities? So it's I think mapping is a very possible thing. It is there are many providers out there who will do this. It is a matter of adopting the technologies that are already in place. It's not rocket science or rocket surgery, as I like to say.
No, and I was gonna say, because technology is advancing so much, and I wanted to ask you a question now, just slightly, now with AI coming into place in the workforce, is there something or somewhere where AI can be implemented for best practices in the future? You guys are like, maybe kind of seeing where AI can fit better?
That's an interesting question, and I'll admit that I'm not an expert in it by any means. I do know that there are multiple companies out there who are implementing AI to analyze data in the damage prevention world, for ticket screening, for example. When these operators are in receipt of tickets, they're screening which tickets really do need to be located and marked and which don't. And AI is playing a larger and larger role in that. I think truly that AI could have some tremendous benefits across the industry. There is no question about it. One thing that I'm not sure AI can do, which is the most important component of damage prevention, is communicate.
Yeah.
It's all about relationships. And from the very beginning, of this damage prevention adventure that we've all been on, it is about communication. The 811 Center is a mode of communication. Knowing the players in your community, knowing who the locator is on a job, knowing who the excavator is, knowing who's sponsoring that work. And I mean knowing their names and their telephone numbers so that you can contact these people and resolve challenges is probably the most effective way to get things done. And while computers can do this, an 811 system can do this, online ticket management, all of these things are wonderful tools in the toolbox. AI is one of those things. But I wonder if it could ever effectively replace the human element, which is just so critical to this.
And, coming into that large part that really makes that safety culture kind of bridge between how you were talking about earlier, the contracts and the locators and the excavators themselves, that communication, I feel like, is the bridge between all of those points for our total culture of safety when it comes down to damage prevention.
I agree.
I wanted to kind of branch off a little bit and ask something, since we are education and outreach, we review a lot of different things all the time, and we were curious as to how might CGA measure success in damage prevention what metrics or signs really tell you that that outreach is having an impact on that safety culture?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that you were in education and outreach because it is such a critical component of everything that we do, right? It is the cornerstone of getting people together, communicating with them about what's required, putting face, it's the human element, right?
Yeah.
We're human beings. We're all working together. Here's what we can do to help each other. And it really
Help
does
me to help
create
you.
good- Yeah, help me help you. We'll help you. It really does create that human element that is so critical to all this. What we believe is that what gets measured gets managed. So when I say that, I mean that all stakeholders have a different role in this. They all have a different responsibility. It is a shared responsibility. But what's really critical in the 811 system is that you're not just responsible for your duties under the law. You are responsible to the person who needs what you do. So if you're a excavator, you need that facility owner operator to mark and locate those lines on time and effectively. That is your responsibility as a facility owner operator. So let's measure that. Let's measure how they are doing that work. Let's look at their on-time performance. Let's look at how facility owner operators are handling complex tickets or challenging locates. When we look at excavators, let's look at the damage rate of excavators and let's normalize it as best we can. Let's normalize it by work hours or something that everyone tracks. We do this work in the Damage Prevention Institute at the Common Ground Alliance. We are actively measuring the performance of these stakeholders. Locators really should be measured on their on-time performance and the accuracy of those locates. This is a circle of accountability. We all have responsibilities to fulfill our duties within our companies. We have company policies. We have laws that we have to follow. But when damage prevention works is when everyone is accountable to everyone else and says, I've done my job and I want you to do your job and I'll help you do your job. We're all accountable to one another. So measuring the performance of those duties that support the next stakeholder in that process is the way to go. And when companies and organizations start to measure that kind of performance, they start to manage that kind of performance because they want good numbers and they want to be able to demonstrate that they're doing their jobs, right? So it is just, measurement is critically important. And outreach and engagement, I think in particular, we do lots of surveys. We do, awareness surveys on how many people know about 811? How many homeowners intend to call 811 before they dig in their yard? Those kinds of measurements are also critically important because it gives us a sense of how our reach is impacting people. No survey is perfect. Can't always measure that exactly, but really understanding it's an idea. Yeah. I mean, really just understanding the impact of that outreach and engagement is critical. It helps us hone our message.
A follow-up question when it comes to outreach, how have you seen the Spanish outreach from CGA perspective and how they've gone into that group and try to send that message of, contacting 911 for your dig? I'm not bilingual liaison here at Oki, so I've tried kind of my first steps last year and I was able to do a safety day, training workers about the 811 process here at Oki. How do you guys see that, as a nationwide goals?
And are you saying Spanish language? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. We obviously believe that Spanish language training and outreach is a critical element of this.
Yeah.
And so to that end, we have, especially in our training modules most recently, we are producing those training modules, excavator training modules in both Spanish and English. We also have some volunteer leaders within the Common Ground Alliance. One of our co-chairs over the Education and Outreach Committee, for lack of a better term, simple term, she is a bilingual person. She speaks both Spanish and English, and she and her company has had such a tremendous impact on outreach to Spanish-speaking communities. We've listened to her. Our members drive what we do, and we know that delivering messages keeping people safe has everything to do with communication. If people speak Spanish, let's communicate in Spanish. That's a big deal. And by the same token, there are some French Canadians who use a lot of our resources, and we've worked to make the DIRT data form functional for them. We've worked with, the French speaking community in Canada to make sure that we have resources available to them. So I would say this is a growing trend, and I would say that it is something that we probably all can do a much better job of. And I think, just beyond Spanish language, I think there's also some opportunity to talk about culture, working culture, how different cultures perform their work with different people. How do some cultures perceive the boss? How do other cultures perceive the boss? Would you as a person do what your boss says, even though it's against best practice? In many cases, the answer is yes. And it really needs to change, right? We really need to address some of the cultural elements that can lead to miscommunication on a job site or in any other forum, right? There are cultural elements at play here. And it spans every culture there is that we have. We're a multicultural society, and we have to deal with the fact that all of us have a role to play, and we have to address some of those cultural barriers. Language is one of the biggest ones.
That's awesome. No, and I feel like, it's breaking that barrier, to deliver that message. I think it kind of gets lost in translation, trying to deliver them, because I think a lot of, just from what I've seen, I think a lot of workers that speak Spanish are a little bit afraid to speak up a little bit, or just to say, hey, this is not safe, but I have to do the job anyway. So I think it's just telling them, hey, you have the right to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Ask a question, and like you said, it's creating that behavior of performance, like, hey, how you see your boss and all that kind of stuff. I think it's very important to still deliver that message, like, hey, keep it safe.
I think I agree with you completely. And I think the boss needs to be sensitive to what's going on that end, right? And accept the fact that there are going to be some opportunities for miscommunication. It's not just the responsibility of the Spanish speaking excavator or whoever to speak up. There has to be a two-way communication. There has to be some better understanding of cultural differences and how we can overcome those to be safe.
That was a more question, Paul. I think I have one last question, and that is, in your opinion, what is the most important part or step to damage prevention?
Well, I think we've touched on it a lot. Communication. Yeah. And I've been singing this song for a long time, and the good folks that have preceded me have been singing this song for a very long time. Every time we talk to any stakeholder in any capacity, it is always that communication is the number one thing that we can do. The call to A11 initiates that communication. That is not the end of the game. That's the start of the game. And I think beyond communication, just among the people that are actually working, we've got to engage with each other at a higher level as well, right? So we need to take a seat at the table. CGA offers those seats. Once you are in the CGA, you are a member of CGA. We represent you. That means that we represent the interests of a lot of different organizations, and their interests are often in conflict, right? There's conflict among those interests. That's okay. We got to work through the conflict, right? So the collaborative engagement between people who can make decisions and make changes that are lasting is so critically important. And CGA offers an opportunity for that through our committees and through our events. And we work on behalf of our stakeholders, and our stakeholders drive the work that we do.
Sam, any last thing you would like to add as a safe message for those who are listening, from your experience? Anything you would like to add?
What I would say is that the people are who matter. Attitude is everything. And you can really see a major difference between people who come to the table with the right attitude and say, I'm willing to admit mistakes. I'm willing to acknowledge that some of our business practices cause problems for others. You know, that openness, that willingness to be vulnerable, for lack of a better term, and say, okay, what can we do better here, is really how we can come to some better agreements and how we can crack this nut together. So I would say that engagement and that right attitude among the people who can really make a difference is everything.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Sam.
Yes, thank you. This was excellent, very informative. We really appreciate your time, Sam.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. Let's do it
No,
again.
it's a great conversation. Sam Hall, Vice President for the Damage Prevention Institute at CGA. Again, Sam, thank you so much for being here with us today, and we'll have to have you back. I will wish you the best for the surgery. Hopefully everything goes well and speedy recovery.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the conversation, guys. I hope you enjoy your day.
You too.